Hi, and welcome to Probeline, a production of GrassRoots Community Network. And we want to thank our generous and community-minded sponsors, A&B Bank of Aspen, who have graciously underwritten this program and making this possible. Probeline provides an opportunity for you to get to know candidates running in March for both mayor and council, and they want to represent you. So let's get to know them a little bit better. Today's guest is Rachael.
Hey, how are you doing, Reed?
I guess you're well known enough that you can go by
Rachael.
one name. You know.
No, that's Tori.
Oh, okay.
I'm Rachael
well,
Richards.
I don't want to get that confused.
I don't
Rachael
want to lose
Richards.
the alliteration.
Yes.
You know, it's always good.
Got it.
Yeah.
So welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
making time in a busy campaign to come and talk with us. And let me start with one question.
Sure.
You want to represent the people of Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
What does representation mean to you?
Oh, boy. Well, it really means listening to a lot of people with respect for what different points of view and information and knowledge they can bring to a given issue. And then being able to represent that, whether you're dealing with the state legislature on legislation that's being considered, whether it's more regional meetings with groups like Club 20 of the Western Slope, whether it's your neighboring communities that you need to work with in regional partnerships, Snowmass, Basalt, Carbondale. The county just had a report in yesterday's paper that over 60% of the workforce in Pitkin County comes from outside of Pitkin County, and 20% of those actually travel more than 50 miles each direction daily to serve our community. So I think representing the heart and soul of Aspen in caring for the nonprofit community and helping to spread what we have and give back to those who give so much to us.
Well, as a representative, you have a variety of people. You know, you're representing a diverse group of people,
Yes.
and they don't
Always
necessarily agree. I've heard.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's about listening and seeing when there is compromise, but the ability to say yes and move things forward and to say no, we're not doing that, are an incredibly important part of the service of the commission or the county or the mayor. And you need to be able to tell people why and why we can't. And you'll be there and get a lot of what I used to call the Hail Mary pass, where people say, this is a really good idea. Can you take it and run with it? And it's like, well, I don't think there's really the support there or the group there or a priority perhaps in times when there's other things going on. So being able to represent your position, why you've reached the conclusions you have, you cannot make all the people happy all the time, but you can earn respect by giving respect and by letting people know why you've made the choices you are when you vote.
So it's a dialogue, in a sense.
It is, and it needs to be a very open and transparent dialogue. It needs to be give and take and not unending. Things can't go on forever with inaction and a lack of a decision-making. Opportunities come and go, and doors open and shut. And so I think you need to be prepared to move forward. And one thing I do believe I've always tried to do is deal with the day-to-day issues, the concerns we have as a community, but look long range. What is coming down the pike? What do we need to be prepared for as a community? That's one of the reasons I instigated and helped pass the water tax in Pitkin County, 1/10 of 1 cent going forward in 2017. Was it, or before then, no, 2007?
It was right around there.
Right around there. But that was before everyone else realized the Colorado River was collapsing and that we have 30% conditional water rights remaining to be taken out of our watershed and head eastward to the Front Range. I think the city needs to work more closely with the county on how we use those funds and protecting our watershed. But looking forward to say, what is the next wave of affordable housing crisis? We know it's pretty bad right now, but what happens when all the people in free market homes in the Mid-Valley fully retire? And they've earned their due, they've made the commute, they bought 20, 30 years ago, but those homes with today's real estate market are not going to house the same job categories or caliber of income, not with the real estate prices that we need to make the community go on.
That's a very regional point of view.
Well, I think that having served as a county commissioner broadened my viewpoint and taught me a lot about what other communities deal with. As you know, I think that I served on the Club 20, Western 20 counties of Colorado as a board member and later on their executive committee. And that group formed to make sure the West Slope got its share of transportation funding and we weren't all dirt roads and everything going to Denver and the Front Range. And that sort of bias against the more rural communities, we don't think of ourselves as a rural community because Aspen's a little sophisticated, but we share very, very much common ground, common interest, rural health care, single interest, single payer prices. I worked on that issue to get the reinsurance program going. So if you're not in a group policy, you could get at least halfway decent rate. But rural hospitals, rural school funding, we're very connected. We're just all connected. No one lives in a snow globe by themselves.
Even though they may want to.
Yeah, exactly. So now the questions of dealing the tarot cards of life.
Yes, let's see. Play a little game here. See how that goes. So we put together these questions, and you get to pick.
Okay, we'll go with that one. There we go.
All right.
That one had the bent corner. I think it's the
It's not a marked card.
not a marked card.
But it is an interesting question, I think.
Okay.
What role has luck played in your life?
Well, I think I'm very lucky when I met my husband, Paul. We've been married we married during the pandemic, but we've been dating for over 20 years before that. And it was by chance at the old Ute City Bank.
Oh.
And I was out campaigning to get onto the city council in 2003. And so all the places we met that night, he kind of was very persistent because I realized he wasn't a voter. He was from Boulder. And so I said, thank you very much. It's nice to meet you, and moved on. And it was about 2 weeks before the election. But as Paul introduced himself, he let me know he was working on a nonprofit project to try to save the Green River from fracking. And we have very common interest in that and in water. And he is a source water specialist, protecting the source of water coming into the plants. And that also helped build my interest in water. And so that would be the luckiest thing, I suppose. But I haven't really won the lottery yet.
But do you think in your political career, is there a role for luck in that?
Well, was it fortune
it's
favors the
very
forewarned?
wonderful that you brought up your husband,
Yeah,
by the
no.
way, but-
Well, politically, sure. I think when the time is ripe, you have to take opportunities. And I've seen opportunities lost. So I've seen bad luck. When our community chose not to buy the old Mother Lode restaurant adjacent to the Wheeler Opera House with Wheeler funds and no new taxes required, and it was argued against that the appraisal came in at $3.4 million and Howard was offering it for $3.1. And we didn't vote for it, and there was a lot of little side arguments as to why. But 6 months later, it sold for $8.6 million, and so I think we were lucky to preserve Wilk Wilkinson's land on top of Smuggler Mountain, and that came from the funding of a sales tax I helped pass when I was mayor. And we were able to use that money to help buy the Drosty property. That's now Sky Mountain Park, and participate with GoCo and Pitkin County and things like that. So you make your own luck when you seize opportunities when they're available.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Oh, and card number 2. Let's take the far one there.
Oh,
It's just calling me.
Rachael picked to the far right.
It's my left.
That's fair. I guess that says something about us. But how do you deal with uncertainty?
Well, I think you try to really talk to the experts and take a look at an issue from a 360 degree from different sides. If you're really uncertain, is there a different way I should be looking at this? and hearing from people. Sometimes you have to let things perk a little, and finish cooking, as it were, to know this is what really is the best. But hearing from other people, being willing to discuss your uncertainty, I think that makes a difference. Sometimes there's people or groups or organizations or cities that have been through similar situations, and you can kind of look to experience that you don't have yet.
Right.
And you have to ask, is it something that has to be done now? Or is it something that can cook a little longer? And some things are more urgent. I do think the entrance to Aspen is an issue that's very urgent now. You were around when I was around back in the day, originally dealing with those issues. And, the Maroon Creek Bridge was a converted railroad trestle and a 2-lane on that. And I'm glad we have a new bridge there now. And, the fire danger, which we all know from looking around the country and even at the burn scar and basalt, is real. And that wasn't something we were looking at back in the 90s, So I think that there are things you become certain of, and sometimes people would like to confuse you and tell you it's not certain.
Well, and sometimes, in public life, you have to make this or move forward with decisions when there isn't certainty about it, but the results of it oftentimes are very certain. There's amount of risk there.
Well, I think that really you have to be willing to accept that some things are not going to work the way you want them to.
Yeah.
But you won't find that out until you try. You need to go forward. And when you're developing staff and working with your departments, if they're all so afraid to make a mistake, you probably will be just stuck in the status quo forever. You will be inertia. So I think being willing to move forward and experiment with things. But again, you can take some of the uncertainty out of the equation, working with experts, working with past experience, working with others who've been through similar situations.
Great.
Okay, more cards.
Let's pick another one.
Okay, well, we'll go to my right this time.
All right. Rachael, tell me about your most recent humbling experience.
Wow. That's a weird question. It starts to feel personal. I mean, my younger brother passed away about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I wished I'd lived back east and could spend more time with him before that happened. I went back in October. Politically, I guess it might be how the trying to create a better pedestrian area on the Galena Street worked out. I think there were some good lessons learned. The elimination of the left onto Hyman for public safety, particularly eliminating the angle in parking on both sides of the road that left it very unattractive and had ruined what was kind of a keystone view of Aspen Mountain. And now we have angle on one side and not on the other. But the implementation of that didn't really go well, and it was humbling, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
But you have to learn.
What do you think you learned from that? I mean, if I understand it correctly, you had a plan and thought it was a good plan.
Yeah.
And then it was implemented and it was like, ooh.
Yeah. Again, I think we did learn a lot from it, and you'll still always hear the calls of, can't we have a more pedestrian-oriented community? And what's made me think is that maybe it's other aspects of pedestrian. We should have wider sidewalks. We did wider sidewalks in front of the Wheeler Opera House and on that street. And then you can have the outdoor cafe and seating areas and things like that. And so that Mill Street did get rebuilt wider. But other areas, it's a little lean. Working on handicap connections was very important to me. That was an issue I brought up in the past and helped raise some money for, so that we're really an accessible community. We're working, but now the new thing to learn from, or to say how do we apply it to, is e-bikes, because people are very concerned with the speed that an e-bike will come at them on a trail, and are all trails open for that, and should e-bikes be allowed in the back country and everywhere, and how do e-bikes mix with horses? So, you know, there's always new issues to manage and to take a look at, and again, some things are going to work out really well, some things will work out not as well as you wish, and some things don't work out at all.
Right.
And you have to be willing to take your chops, take your licks, and say, okay, that was wrong. We'll undo it, and we'll do what we can, learning from it.
Great. Pick one.
Do you do these same questions each election?
Yes.
Now, I know you
No,
do for each candidate, but each. Yeah,
No, this is the first time I've done this.
Did it this way? Okay, they're tough ones. We'll go with that one close to you.
What's the one thing you wish you knew earlier in your career?
Wow. I think my son, who lives in Fruta, has told me he wished I knew I should have run for Congress sooner after we saw Lauren Boebert take the seat. But that's his. I guess I wish I knew how to make more time in the day sooner, to be a little more organized. I have learned over time to focus, but you can't get so focused on one thing you lose track of others. And this election is a little bit of an example of that, because the entrance is predominant. It's so much so that other important things are running under the radar. I think our short-term rental codes are very important, and I would not like to see a future council repeal those. We've seen other resort desirable places across the country enact very similar legislation. But for all the desire to control growth, you really have to control demand. And to turn every residence throughout Aspen into a short-term mini non-mitigated hotel would create demand that we simply can't begin to serve or shouldn't. What I've learned over time is a lot of cliches that people use, and I think some are more apropos than ever. Like, don't kill the golden goose. You know, you have to nurture it. You have to take care of it. You have to be willing to guard and say no, and not every new exciting adventure is something we have the workforce to cover, that you can't disappoint guests. You don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And so those are the types of things I feel I've learned to some extent, but everyone can stub their toe.
Well, as a political career, what got you to run in the first place?
I think really it was having a son did a lot for me to do that. I also grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and so politics was kind of front and center there on the news every night in the Washington Post, in a way that they're not in other places, and maybe not in Aspen for the most part, except for local issues. And I grew up seeing the civil rights movement and women's liberation movement and the Vietnam War and the activism that surrounded those things. So I think that was ingrained in me a little bit in Catholic school for earlier grades of, trying to plant trees that others will sit in the shade of, and plant a vineyard someone else will drink the wine from, and that, it's what you give during your life that matters the most. And then when I was in Aspen, I met people, and I started going to Colette Penn's seminars that she had with Colorado Mountain College, which was hard choices, that there's unlimited demand, limited resources, therefore hard choices. And oddly enough, we're talking about mostly the same issues now that we were then. How to protect the environment, how to house a workforce, how to deal with transportation, how to manage growth. And I think in the most part we've been successful, but they're the unintended consequences of those very same things. And the problems have gotten more complex. Climate change is new. When I was young, we were worried about acid rain. Now we're worried about the whole planet burning up and what's happening to our snowpack and living through drought on the Colorado Plateau. So I would like to apply my experience and the learning to these sort of issues now.
So it was more of a calling as opposed to a particular issue.
Absolutely.
That got you going.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Here, let me help.
We're playing three-card mounting now. We'll go with the middle one.
All right. What do you think sets a successful person apart?
Well, it's not luck. You know, luck can play a role, but it's hard work. You know, it's fortune favors the prepared, and success comes from persistence, and it comes from building the relationships and the partners and finding the pieces and coalition you need to be successful. There's a lot of examples of that within our valley. We have a lot of successful nonprofits that have reached out and spread across the community, and it becomes, how do you measure success? You know, sometimes success is a one-on-one issue, or a success of raising one person or raising one. Other times it's a success of a much larger issue. I would look to RAFTA as being that. You know, that started as, when you were here, intergovernmental agreement between Aspen and Pitkin County, and just, you know, a handshake deal practically. You know, either one party could break it apart if they weren't mad at the new board or something. And when I was mayor, I helped lead the effort to form that into a regional transportation authority. And that was a valley-wide effort, and there were great partners, Dan Richardson and others, Jackie Whitsitt, up and down the valley, to bring 8 different municipalities with different populations together to say, we want to manage traffic growth, and we can work together to do that. So it's about building partnerships and pulling together the elements of success. And you have to have an ideal that people buy into, to work around. It can't be, again, a Hail Mary pass. You know? It's got to be something that is really respected and needed, and people can see the value of, to put their time, their heart, their money into.
So it is building coalitions.
Absolutely.
In many ways.
Absolutely.
And what about personal goals, and how do they play into being successful? And
personal goals. Well, I know I'd like to up my computer skills a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, when you get into that. We're running out of time.
Nope.
A phone call?
Nope, that's my problem.
Okay, thank you. You know, it's about having a life well lived for me, to feel like you've contributed and you've made a difference, and it doesn't have to be big things, it can be little things. And, you know, for Christmas, I tend to bake a bunch of Christmas cookies and run them around to the homeless shelter and the police department, and to my coworkers I've worked with at City Market or Clark's Market and the thrift shop, and whoever I can think of, until I run out of cookies, and make just tons of bar cookies, like 6 big baker sheet pans of I call them thigh builders. They're pretty rich. And, you know, so that's just something that it gives me a great joy. And so things that give you joy in life, you know, you have to do things. So people will talk about how frustrating politics is, and why would you do that? And it takes all your time. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes you have a success. Sometimes you can see someone pushing a baby around over at the Yellow Brick and say, that I was part of that.
Right.
Or when you see the art opening here at the Red Brick, and the artists locally who cannot get into high-priced galleries in town showing their incredible products and wares and trades, and you're like, you know, I was a part of that. And I think that's worth more than money.
Wonderful.
Oh, we're down to the final eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Right.
This is great, the way you're doing this. I really think it's
thank
fun. Yeah.
Why did you come to Aspen?
I came to Aspen to ski. And I came to Aspen a week before my 18th birthday. And I grew up relatively independently. I'd worked throughout high school a bit. And I had a little bit of mother-daughter stuff going on, which isn't uncommon. And I also had always talked about, we're going to get our own place when we're 18 with my cousin, you know, and I was ready to go. I had an older brother who would kind of picked on me a lot. I don't know, sibling rivalry that never went away. And I just thought I want to go out and create my own life and be my own person.
And
so,
at 18, you picked Aspen
yes, I did.
from Silver Spring,
From
Maryland.
Silver Spring, Maryland. Well, we'd skied up on the East Coast, and I wrote to the state of Colorado and got a relocation package. And then I saw the 4 ski resorts right next to each other, and I said, that's it. I'd worked in restaurants at that point. I knew how to cook, and I'm like, you have fat frying pan, we'll travel. You can always find a job in a kitchen. And so I sold my '69 Mustang and got on the Greyhound bus with my skis and a package, a little bit of, a big trunk. I do remember getting out in Glenwood Springs off that Greyhound bus, and they said the next connection up to Aspen was like 4 hours later. And I'm like, I'm 3 days across, and so I took my stuff across the street, and I decided I'd hitchhike up there. And there were some cowboys sitting in a pickup truck just kind of watching me pull that truck across and go back for the other trunk. And then they said, welcome to Colorado, ma'am. Can we give you a ride? And they took me to the end of Glenwood Springs on Highway 82, the hitching station. And I hitched a ride from there. And I took, I think, 2 more rides, but the last party came straight into Aspen. And we passed the old Hotel Jerome, painted white with the blue elbows. And they went right into Little Annie's. And I said, can I leave my stuff in your car while I go get a room? And I spent my first night at the Hotel Jerome, Little Annie's. It was, oh, excuse me, not Little Annie's. They stayed at Little Annie's. I sent to the Jerome. It was $17.50 a night, but I had to move over to the Little Red Ski House the next day because it was too pricey. And I went to the Super restaurant on the Hyman Avenue Mall where my grandmother had a friend whose daughter had worked there. And so I'm trying their lunch, and they're starting to put up a help wanted sign in the window for a cook while I'm there. And I said, you got your person, I'll be back tonight. And I started working my second day in town.
Cooking.
Yeah, kitchen manager, yeah.
That's amazing.
Later I was kitchen manager by the time I left that job, and I was a specials cook and breakfast chef at the old Hotel Jerome, and I really enjoy cooking. So
why do you stay?
Why do I stay? It's my home.
Yeah.
I've put my heart and soul and spirit into this town. It's funny when you've established that with yourself, with a town. You have pain when you see people pass away and generations pass, and you know your generation will pass as well. But the future is always exciting, and the new people who are here and the new neighbors I meet when units turn over in my housing complex, it's part of why I believe in the affordable housing program so much. I don't think you succeed as a community if people are just coming in for 2 or 3 years to build their resume and then go somewhere else. And that, when people talk about housing as, oh, well, we'd like to make it all rentals so we can kick people out when they are ready to retire, or if they're not doing the right job type. All these job types are right for this town. Everything works together synergistically. And you can't ask someone to give 30, 40, 50 years of their working life and then go move somewhere else and make new friends in your golden years. I'm a strong advocate for our housing goals of a living, breathing community with room for singles and couples and families with children through your working years into retirement. That our sheriff, Bob Broadus, was able to spend his last few years living in Truscott Rental. That's entirely appropriate, and that's a unit well used.
That's wonderful. We only have 1 minute left.
Okay, I'll make it short.
Okay, I challenge you. How do you, as a public servant, either weave or separate your public and private life?
Boy, you have to leave town. No, I'm only teasing there. But that's what Bill Toot used to tell me. He said he would leave town to feel like he could get away from it for a little while. And sometimes, when I was with my son having dinner, people would want to talk about the issues, and I'd say I'm having dinner with my son, and they'd say, oh, okay, well, just 1 more minute,
Right.
So I think I like to read a lot. I like to garden a lot. I like to cook. And, to socialize with others and to get out of town. Because, A, it gives you a good perspective when you come back. We've always experienced that.
We're going to have to leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
It was such a pleasure. And thank you for taking the time for doing this.
Well, and thanks, GrassRoots, and thank you, Reed.
You're quite welcome.
It's wonderful.
And that concludes another episode of Probeline, a production of GrassRoots Community Network. You can support GrassRoots in a variety of ways. Donate, online, volunteer, or produce your own show. And thank you very much. Know Aspen, watch GrassRoots.